Well, hello. I can go ahead and chat with you. Just can't give announcements yet. We're glad you're here this morning. I missed last week. Had a surprise come up, so wasn't able to be here. And then I was in a conference in Murfreesboro Wednesday, so I've missed y'all. I've missed being here. Jimmy, are you going to want to announce, or you want? Okay. All right, so I'm going to have some new announcements. So listen up. I know y'all look at me and you might start daydreaming because I say the same things every week, but I've got some new stuff for you this week. This evening at 6 o'clock at Fields, Lewis County, well, it's the middle school now, but it's the high school football field behind the middle school and the new high school is our annual Fields of Faith. So that is FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Please come, be a part of that. It's always a wonderful time. Are you going to, did you say you did want to say more about that? Or is that, okay. So come be a part of that. It's always a wonderful time, and it's student-led. So it's great to see our students who are champions of Jesus in our school system to be in front of not only their peers, but parents, adults, faith leaders in the community. It's a wonderful time. So be part of that at 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock, I'm assuming no healing school this afternoon because of that. So no healing school. In the morning, 7 o'clock is prayer at City Hall. And then tomorrow night at 6 o'clock would be our men's Bible study, which happens here. Tuesday night, our community prayer meeting that happens at 6 o'clock is at New Hope Baptist this week. And then Wednesday, we will have services here. We call them Rock Wednesday, reaching our community's kids. And we start serving dinner at 6. We always need a lot of help, hands-on with preparation and cleanup and all that goes in with that. And our menu is soup and sandwiches. So that has been posted on our Rock Wednesday Facebook page. And if you're not sure how to connect with that, I'm sure Miss Kathy can connect you. Thursday night is our weekly Just for Kicks, which is Karate for Christ at 6 o'clock. If that's something your child is interested in, Lawrence is here somewhere, and you can connect with him for information about that. I don't think there's anything going on Friday. Going once. Saturday, I cannot remember the times, but there is a flyer posted on the, I know it's on our door going out to North Park. I'm not sure, maybe here, but there is a health fair, and that is a community event. It's free, and there's a lot of good resources. So if that's something that you might be interested in, that's happening at Blondie Church. And then that leads us to Sunday morning at 9 o'clock prayer, and that's in the old sanctuary, and that happens again at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Here is our new stuff. October 19th, Sunday, October 19th, is our Pastor Appreciation. We do an annual Pastor Appreciation Day where it's a wonderful service where we honor our pastors, and then we have lunch together. So go ahead and put that on your calendar. We will have more information as far as what the menu is going to be and what your part can be that day, but please get that on your calendar so you don't make other plans. And then ladies, remember last time I was up here, I said we need to get on it. Well, we're on it. So our annual fall brunch, our progressive brunch, is going to be Saturday, October 25th. And that's where we start at Carolyn Woodward's house for some appetizers, and then we go to the main course at my house, and then we walk a few steps over to the Jowers house for dessert. That will start at 9 o'clock on October 25th. So ladies, please get that on your calendar so you don't double book yourself. We want to make sure that you attend. It has been a wonderful time of fellowship in the past, and just please put that priority for us ladies to get together that day. A couple other things. October 31st, we have our fall festival here every year at the Dwelling Place. We have around 12 to 1,500 plus people that come back here. It's an alternative to Halloween. It's a great time for our community and just to serve and love on our community. We're going to go ahead and start accepting candy Unlike extravaganza, we will take chocolate. We will take chocolate for this one. So any kind of candy, as long as it's individually wrapped, you can bring that, and I'm sure Miss Christian will be fixing up a box to put in the foyer, and you can just put bags of candy there. And then this is also new. November 1st, we will be giving our sneak peek of the parenting enrichment program that Judge Spitzer has really challenged us to put together as a curriculum to help educate parents in our community and even eventually the state. He's already talked to even organizations as large as Ford Motor Company to see if they're interested in using this. So it's a big challenge for us, but we're going to do a sneak peek November 1st. The locations to be determined. It will either be here or Blondie. We're not really sure where that's going to land, but get that on your calendar. It will probably be 3-ish, 3:30 to 6, somewhere in there, and we will do a sneak peek of two of the lessons. So put that on your calendar too. And Jimmy, you had one other thing. You want to announce it? Well, it's live if you don't care, so those of us join us live stream can hear too.
This coming Wednesday morning at the two schools, we have See You at the Pole at 7:30. There's a flagpole in front of the high school, the new high school, and then, of course, the flagpole in front of the middle school, which is the old high school. So we'll be gathering at those two places at 7:30 Wednesday morning.
I guess that's it. All right, is that enough? Yeah. Y'all got your marching orders? All right. For y'all in here, for y'all live, y'all miss this part, but for y'all in here, I'm about to freak you out a little bit. The name of the title of this message is The Voice of God and Not a Man. And David, if you'd like to finish preaching it, be welcome to come on up here and talk about Moses and him talking to Pharaoh. You can come on, and then, the voice crying in the wilderness, that's Matthew 3 here. Where's my notes? Yeah, Matthew 3:3, the voice crying in the wilderness, 17, yep, okay, yeah. Anyway. I was standing upstairs laughing like, you've got to be kidding me. Why in the world is he talking about the voice? And to be honest with you, I think it was on your heart before you ever walked in the door. I'm serious. I don't know, but your praise and worship, if you listen to the words of the first song, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, we're going to go on. I'm not going to sit here and dwell on that. Okay, so, Chris, if you could go ahead and pull up Acts 12. At the end of Acts chapter 12, I'm going to talk about Acts chapter 12, but I'm going to read a couple verses real fast. That's towards the end of Acts chapter 12. And sort of let you know where we're starting off. Like I said, the title of this is The Voice of God and Not of Man. And if you go chapter 12, verse 21, it says, So on a set day Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat on his throne and gave an oration to them, and the people kept shouting, the voice of a God. You're going to notice there's not a capital G there. The voice of a God and not of a man. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Basically, they're feeling Herod's head, saying he's all that. So, I'll start off this morning by asking you, have you ever felt your head with you're all that? Have you ever placed yourself on a pedestal and set yourself in a high place like you got this thing all together? Now, to anybody that's between the ages of 14 and 20, you are currently doing this. Well, 3-year-olds do a pretty good job of it too, but then somehow you wait between the ages of 14 and sometimes a little younger and sometimes a little older than 20, but between 14 and 20, somehow we get in our mindset that we're all that and we know it all. I guarantee you, if I go to your social media, you are all that and you know it all. And you do not need any other voices telling you anything to do because you got this all figured out. For some of you, you've never paid a single bill. You've never bought a single car. You've never had a single house payment, and you never provided food for a single child. But somehow, you got this all figured out, right? You want to know why you think you've got that all figured out? There's a voice from an enemy that is trying to destroy you going from a child into adulthood. And the easiest time to capture you, this is not a youth service, y'all, but I am making it sort of one. The easiest time to capture you is when you start refusing voices from God and you start listening to voices that fill yourself, okay? Now, the ages I gave there are sort of funny. I've got a whole youth group over here that's sitting here like looking at me. They got their heads down right now. They maybe got their phones out and they're sitting there thinking, that old man's crazy. He don't know what he's talking about. That generation is just, they lost it years ago, all right? I'm telling you, I thought the same thing when my dad was preaching. My dad was crazy. He don't know what he's talking about. I got this all together. And I know y'all don't think we had social media back then, but we did. We just had to go personally and gather it, okay? We couldn't send it by phone. I think maybe by text was starting about my senior year. But anyway, those last two verses, or not the last two, but close to the last two verses in Acts chapter 12 is basically set up with Herod. And if you look at the beginning of this, all right, and I'm not going to have turn to the scriptures, but if you look at the beginning of this, Herod is basically harassing the church, and he sees that it pleases the Jews. So he takes James out, all right, and then he arrests Peter. But he can't kill him because it's Passover. It's a week of we can't execute people, and so he sticks him in jail, and he puts 16 guards over him, all right? It's going to say 4 whatever squads, whatever. It's basically each squad, I believe at that time, had 4. So he's got 16 guards over him. Peter's sitting in jail, and the day before he's going to face and basically go to execution, the day before, the church is praying. A lot of people have preached out of that. The church starts praying, and basically God comes, an angel comes and takes Peter and walks him through all the guards, anybody that was there watching him, walks him through the gates and sets him out into the town, and he walks through another gate and he talks to disciples of that time. I'm just going to stop right there because I'm just really just feeding you the information of what's in this chapter. But that's leading up to Herod wiping out 4 squads. He kills the soldiers because in that time that's what he's supposed to do. But what I'm meaning to say is that Herod at the beginning of this is a crowd pleaser. All right? Herod is basically sees that killing James pleased the Jews, so he's about to take out Peter too. And fortunately, with church prayers and with God intervening, Peter's, he goes and he never finds him. But Herod's sitting on his own throne at the end of this. And the people of this town, he's angry, and he's going to talk to 2 towns. They're saying, oh, your words are of a God, not of man. You're the greatest, Herod. You're the greatest, right? And he's all pumped up, and boom, God takes him out. This is Herod's death chapter, right? God takes him out because he would not acknowledge God. Okay, I want to, like David said during tithe and offering and preaching my message, I want to apply this to our lives right now. Do you realize that if you are accepting other voices besides the voice of God into your life, then you are taking on what might could take you out? You're basically allowing things to take the place, right? You're putting yourself in a position that not necessarily you think you're on a high pedestal, but God's not on a pedestal. There's no glory for him in your life. And if you look in, I'm going to turn to, and let me get my tablet going. Come on, tablet, work with me today. I've got all these already pulled up. This is supposed to happen fast transition. So if we look at Proverbs, there's some very common verses in Proverbs that you're going to know. I'm going to read Proverbs. This is 16. I'm going to start in 17 and end verse 19. And it says, and I'm going to give it a second, yeah. The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He who keeps his way preserves his soul. Pride, we know this one, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And it's better to be a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. Now, we've always just tell people, pride comes before the fall, right? Well, there's a little bit that leads before that, and it's called the highway of the upright is to depart our lives from evil. And if you look at what Herod had done, he never departed himself from evil, right? And ended up costing him his life. And I think one of the things that I especially want to tell your younger generation is there is a very important aspect to Christianity. And it's said right here in Proverbs. I told my boys when they got out of the house, especially James and Anthony were the first two. Some of y'all know James and Anthony, some of y'all don't. They were two boys that we took in for about 5-6 years. And when they left, they were running. It's okay. I mean, they weren't running, but you know what I mean. I thought it was a little too early, but hey, they're going to make their own decisions. They got that age. But the one thing I told my boys as they were leaving the house and they were going to move out, I said, if you want common sense wisdom, read a chapter of Proverbs every day for a year. There's 31 chapters. You can go a month long. Read a Proverbs. Proverbs is some very common sense knowledge. And in this, it tells us, if you don't depart yourself from the evil, we all say sin comes before the fall, right? We tend to get these things, and we put them in our lives, and we think they're not that big of a deal. It's okay. I can do this. God's going to forgive me, right? And we place ourselves to where the voice of God is no longer important to us, and we've placed ourselves on a pedestal, right? I'm going to give you an example. This is going to relate to a few people in here. Okay, I was a drug addict, okay? I mean, I was a cokehead. I'm not going to kid anybody. It was pothead for years. That wasn't that much, but cocaine, I loved it, all right? I just did it. And it's way behind me now, but I'm going to go and tell you, between that and the music that I listened to and I pumped my life full of, I thought I was on top of the world. And see, I didn't have anything. I'm sort of like the explanation of the kids. I don't think I'd ever make a car payment. I think I told my parents I'd make a car payment, and I skipped out on that. I'm pretty sure I burnt that brick. You see what I'm saying? I never had a house or anything, but the enemy sold me in the voices that were feeding me, right? And if you start looking at sin as a voice from someone who does not want you to make it, as an antichrist voice that wants to take anything away that God has for your life and wants to put it in place, music and drugs, if you'll notice, the biggest parties, what are they going to have? Music and drugs, right? That's what they always brag about. And if you're guys, it's music, drugs, and women, right? You think you're on top of the world? None of that equals anything that is from God. There is a different plan in your life, but the voice that is being shouted to you, especially a younger generation, the voice that's being shouted to you right now is total intent is to keep you away from what God's got for you. And he'll do it from music. He'll do it with anything. He doesn't need the drugs, but I just say it for the people that need that. I go and tell you, those voices have me twisted. There's no way, church. We need to recognize something in the church. There is no way we can twist the verse that says the wages of sin is death to bring people to a knowledge of Jesus Christ. If you try to tell them that you're okay, you're still going to survive in your sin, you are lying to them, and you're an antichrist voice in their life, because repentance of sin and leaving sin behind is what has got me here today. Not that I'm perfect, but saying that I am no longer doing this. This is no longer a part of my life. is where I've gotten to today. And allowing sin to dwell up and be a voice in your life, or the church saying, hey, it's okay that you're living in your sin. We're fine with it. And you're still, surely God's not going to tell you. That goes back to Genesis. And where the voice started with the serpent and Eve, he said, surely not, your God's not going to do this to you, right? Surely God didn't put a tree here that would cause you any harm. But if you notice the very next thing, and this is in Genesis 3, 10, and 11, and I am going to read it. Genesis 3, 10, and 11 said, I'm going to give her, yep, she's good. So he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and hid myself. And he said, who told you you were naked? This is immediately following Eve listening to a serpent. That's up there. You've got God's talking to Adam, and he's saying, I heard your voice in the garden. I became scared because I'm naked. And God says, who are you listening to? What voice are you listening to? Because he said, who did you hear? Who told you that you were naked? And that's how critical voices are in our lives. And as long as we allow the enemy to sit there and talk to us, eventually he's going to get into our heart and our mind where surely God won't punish us for this. But yet we'll walk in something that we have no business walking in. And if the church will allow that to happen, if we are changing rules and bylaws of our churches to allow sin to walk in and not address it, I'm not saying cast it down. I'm not saying cast the person down. I love the person. I'm going to love the person regardless, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to them and say, you can take that trash to heaven with you and it won't matter. There's a gate at heaven. And there's things that are not going to be allowed in there. And if you think that he's going to allow your trash to walk in with you, unforgiven, and not worried about who Jesus is, then the church has just lied to you. And we have to start standing as a body of Christ. We have to realize this because we are allowing voices to sit there and speak and speak and speak into our kids' lives, into young Christians' lives, into our friends' lives, into our families' lives, and to the point where they are dying without a knowledge of Jesus is because all they can hear is the false voices that the enemy has given them and twisted them. And we are to be the voice, David. See, David did this message about 15 minutes, but I can't just go Moses with it, right? If you look in the following chapter, an interesting voice, right? Genesis 4, 9 through 11. And Genesis 4, 9 through 11 is a story y'all know of Cain and Abel, and I'm going to pick it up. And it's a famous verse that says, then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And of course, Cain says, he said, how do I know him? Am I my brother's keeper? We've all heard that voice, right? I mean that verse, not voice. Well, he said it. And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying from the dirt. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Think about that. Voices are crying out. And they're crying from different places. Have you ever noticed that a voice isn't necessarily audible? I thought about this, about voices that speak to us automatically, right? I'm going to go ahead and tell you, a yellow light changing to red is a voice in my mind. It depends on how close I am, whether I'm going to gas it or I'm going to hit the brakes, right? There's a voice that's in my head. There's no sound going on at that light, right? Well, there might be a click that I don't hear, a relay clicking in to change that light. But that yellow light going to red, I'm sitting there going like, okay, am I going to punch it and go through here, or am I going to brake, right? It's a voice that nobody hears. It's not necessarily a sound, but it's a voice that speaks to us. And there's things in your life that you have set up that are voices in your life that you've allowed the past to dictate voices in your life that are still made there in stone, even though nobody's speaking them. Does that make sense? My younger generation might not hear this side of it, okay? My 14 to 20-year-olds might not hear the past calling them up. But I'll go ahead and tell you, my 50 to 70-year-olds, past situations will come back in your mind, and you'll sit there in guilt and shame and hurt and pain, heartache, lies, I mean, just everything that the enemy can put in will try to speak to you, yet not one person has come up to you and saying a thing. There are situations that the enemy set up in your lives that are made to destroy you. All right? And just because, I'm going to tell you, one of the worst places is family. It's very rare I talk to somebody whose whole family is together and everything, and they're still on good terms. Most of the time, I hadn't talked to them in years. No, when he left, he never really came back. So we know where he's at, and he's okay, but, I really hadn't had anything to do with him, right? And you see it in God's intent for the family was not to be apart, but voices through the years in pain have sit there and spoken to it, where God has no position and he has no room to come in and restore anything. And that's not what was intended. The Old Testament is filled with voices. I mean, I started off in Genesis giving you the beginning in Cain and Abel, but if you go, it's like David was talking about. There's voices that are going to Pharaoh that are telling him this is what's going to happen. What's interesting is, and Moses even questioned God. He said, he's not going to believe me. He says, you go take the water from the river, and when you pour it on the ground, I'll turn it to blood. That's how much he's going to believe you, right? He's trying to encourage, but voices set. Abraham set through voices. Moses, voices, right? Setting things in stone. The prophets for years sitting there saying destruction is going to happen, but restoration is coming. They sit there and they would say voices, and people lived on the voices that were spoken to them and depended on what voice was spoken to until we get to John the Baptist, right? And see, when we're introducing a new covenant, then all of a sudden we think that we've taken the voices away from the prophets and everything's been fulfilled. That's where we go with it. When a voice cries out of the wilderness saying, Jesus is coming, right? I told you I was at Matthew 3:17 is sort of where I think is the scriptures that I pulled up. But when the voice crying out of the wilderness, the very next few verses is that he's baptizing Jesus, and there's a voice from heaven saying, this is my son who I'm gonna add just add a little bit, who I am well pleased. I'll put it there. We go, Dad. I'll get you covered there. There's voices, right? And to realize that what we hear and what we take in affect what comes out, then church, we need to wake up to that there's a voice from heaven crying out in our hearts. And it's been there the whole time. And it happens at our salvation is when we allow Jesus to come into our lives, he starts speaking. And sometimes he does it through verses. I go ahead and tell you, sometimes he actually comes through a part of the Bible that speaks an encouraging word to our lives, right? But sometimes he's talking directly to you. Now, I'm going to go back to 2007 when I'm on the back porch smoking a cigarette and God says go to Hornwall. I go and tell you, there was no burning bush. There was no audible voice from heaven saying, my son, my good well servant, I need you to go to Hornwall. But there was something in my heart when I was seeking him that spoke into not only my heart, but my mind that said, you need to go. You need to put this up for sale, and you need to go. And I don't know what Tanya thought about me when I came in and said that we need to sell the house and go. She never questioned me on that. And she questions me on a lot of stuff, which is good. I mean, really. She questioned me on a lot of stuff, which is good. But for some reason, the one that I thought I would catch heck on, she never said a word about it. And in 2008, we're headed this way, a voice. It wasn't a Bible scripture, but it was the same living God. It's the same today, yesterday, and forever, right? The same living God spoke to me. And if he'll speak to me, he'll speak to any one of you. Because I go and tell you, Bobby in the flesh is not worthy of any of his voice. Because too many times I've been like Herod, and I've put myself on a pedestal, and I've surrounded myself with voices that just tell me I'm right and I'm good. And it's like they were saying, You're the voice of a God, not a man. Not that I thought that I was a God, but I thought I didn't need one. And if you'll look at what the enemy tries to take away from your life, and if you look through all the New Testament, it keeps going. Jesus cried out with a loud voice, and that's in Mark 15. In John 5:25, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who will hear will be raised up. You think about that. He's setting voices that we are to hear. There's a voice from God that we are to hear while we're on earth. All right? And when we hear the voice of God, that is what's going to bring us into what his purpose is for our lives. If you look in Acts 4, they had brought all the people, all the nutcases in that were up there, raising Cain earlier, and they thought they were drunk, and they brought them before the leaders. When the leaders released them, they went to the people and told them what was said, and as a group, they raised up a loud voice and gave glory to God. See, there's a voice that sets stone in our lives that brings us to a place where God will be glorified. But if we get outside of that voice, we are not going to hear what he is trying to say to us. We're only going to hear what we need to pump ourselves full of. And we end up walking to a place where we think that everything is okay, but it leads us to death and destruction. Okay? Now, I can talk to us as individuals as sitting in a church, but church, I think we've advanced here. I'm sitting in front of a lot of people that I know seek God, and I mean seek God hard. So what I want to say to you is, we as this church need to become the voice of God, so the others out there that are struggling, that are listening to other voices that are tearing into their lives, that are dealing with anxiety and depression because the voices that are speaking to them have them wound up, and it's not a voice from God. We need to become the voice that speaks into their lives. But to do that, we're going to have to continuously, like Proverbs said, separate ourselves from evil. I've skipped through a lot. If you look in Acts, Paul is sitting there, it's Saul at the time, and he's down on the ground, and he hears a voice, and the people that are with him, they hear a voice, but they see no one. So if you're questioning whether God can speak while we're on earth, there's your proof. Go look at Acts 9:7. They heard a voice. The people who were with Saul, which we know is Paul, who wrote most of the Bible, or not most of the Bible, probably about 40% of the New Testament. What mainly preachers preach out of, because of the radical salvation that man went through, and basically the revelation that he received while he was on earth, and the way he spoke to churches still speaks to our hearts relevant today. He became a voice of what God was saying in that day and time. And if you look at how radically he was saved and where it brought it to, and you look how radical he was to the churches, you realize that's what I want to be like. I don't want to sit no more and just talk a good talk and pray a good prayer and walk out of here where no life can be, because I'm not speaking what God spoke. And what really speaks to me is like when David gets up here and says, in prayer, I found this, because he's praying to go pray. Think about that. He's praying that God gives him a word because he's been asked to go pray for somebody who's sick. David's seeking a voice so that he can give the voice of God instead of saying a good prayer. I see so many people talk about, I want to learn how to pray. You want to learn how to pray? Seek God. Start talking to him, and in those talking, you're going to start getting things, revelation that you've never had before, and when you get that revelation, you're going to start speaking words you've never spoke before, and when that starts coming out, there's going to be life that you've never seen before. And I am a living testimony to what God can do with revelation and sacrifice from us and obedience and separate yourself from evil, because there's no reason I should be in a pulpit. There's no reason outside of God that I should ever be able to preach this. There's no reason I should ever have a voice of God, because what I did was basically curse him, tell everybody they didn't need him, and I built my life to where I did not need a God. And I sat there in the covering of Christians and acted like I was all right, but I built myself on a pedestal without a God. and treated it like I was okay. And when I look back on that, when I look back in the past, I was telling the guys yesterday, there's one thing that you need to realize. I want you to fight for the future, all right? I'm not talking about just your kids. I'm talking about your purpose in life. But if you are going to live in the past, you are taking a hand behind your back and tying it and saying, okay, I'm going to fight you without my hands in front of me. Folks, we have to let our past go. And I know I've gone off on a rabbit trail. I understand that. But I felt like I should say it again. Your past will sit there and tie your hands behind the back of the whole time you're trying to look forward and go forward. And you try fighting that fight without your hands. But God gave you freedom. He released you. And when He forgave me, and when I accepted Him, and when I started seeking Him, and when I started separating myself from evil, when I started not turning away from His word, that's when He put a word in me that I could speak forward and I could speak life into people's lives. I'm not that great of a preacher. But if you hear anything good, it came from Him. It didn't come from me. Trust me, I'm not that smart. You can ask anybody that grew up with me or has been around with me for a while. I'm a redneck Mississippi boy, and that's okay. But when God gives me a revelation and He lights something in my heart and He puts something burning in me, and then I sit there and I listen to it during offering time, and David's coming up with a voice, and I'm sitting there going, you got to be kidding me. How much do we need the voice of God right now? Because there is a cry from heaven. There is a shout from heaven this morning on this house for you to hear the voice of God. Don't listen to anything else. Listen to the voice of God. Young people, separate yourself from the social media and the nonsense for a little while and see what God's got to say. Because I believe that He is speaking into your lives right now, something that is going to carry you for years to come and something that's going to affect generations for years to come. And if you will hear that voice, if you will hear that voice over the voice that the enemy's trying to tell you, then you will see life. But if you keep just living good enough for everybody else, you'll never see the greatness that God has for you. You'll walk in something else. Separate ourselves from evil. The last verse I'm going to come out of is in Hebrews. And it references Psalm 95. And when David said he was going to Psalms, I was like, please don't say chapter 95. I thought he was actually going to say it. But anyway, you can find this in Psalms 95. But and we'll pick it up, Hebrews 3, chapter 7. And it says, therefore, as the Holy Spirit says today, if you will hear His voice, and don't harden your hearts as in the rebellion in the day of the trial in the wilderness, where the fathers tested me and tried me, and saw my works 40 years. Therefore I was angry with that generation, and said, they always go astray in the heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swore in my wrath that they shall never enter my rest. If you will hear His voice, you will enter a rest that you didn't know you needed. I see people struggling and fighting with this world on a daily basis. I see people confused and questioning with this world on a daily basis. And I see people fighting themselves in the mirror on a daily basis because they're trying to be something that God did not intend them to be, because the voice they heard was not from God. And David said it plain and clear. My ending to this sermon was what he ended. Basically, time, the dwelling place cannot speak that to you. It might be said from somewhere around here where it speaks into your heart, but that is a God-burning word getting into your heart and soul that will carry you much further than today. And I realize I'm starting to see more and more how He is shouting from heaven to Hohenwald. And I want the roof of this place to be like an open door to Him, where His word just comes down from heaven and we're able to receive everything He has for us in our lives. And I pray this morning that that's each one of our hearts. Because when we start coming together like they did in Acts, and we start glorifying Him, and our voice starts coming more about Him and not us, then we're about to walk. We're about to run a race we had no idea we could even compete in. Not only that, we're about to be exactly who He has called us to be to the lost. I am believing for a revival in Hohenwald, Tennessee. I'm going to believe that till I see it. But you want to know what revival means to me? Where the empty and the struggling and the desperate and having nothing come to a place where they think they've got it all. Because I go and tell you, I've got it all. And it's because of Him. Heavenly Father, I give you glory this morning. Your word over this house when David was doing tithe and offering and what he was speaking, I wish I could have just recorded it and played it through this mic again when we went live, because, man, you are just speaking to our hearts so clearly, so clearly. Lord, help our lives become your voice. Help us not to speak our words of wisdom, because the wisdom of man is nothing compared to the wisdom of God. It's foolishness. The wisdom of man is foolishness compared to you. And you have all, and you know all, and you give all. And Lord, we pray your blessings. But when I say blessings over this house, I mean your knowledge, your wisdom, your love, your glory and your grace. I just speak over this house and the families that are represented. Lord, I pray for the hurting outside of these walls, Lord, that we become ministers to them, and we don't try to leave anything here, but everything you've given to us, we give out. I thank you for your word over this house and over our lives, and we cannot praise you enough. In Jesus' name.